the meter.
Yeah.
Yeah, I know, for real.
Sorry, we forgot to pay the bill for the room.
Are we back?
Not yet. Water got mad and triggered this.
Here we go.
Yay!
We're good.
And we're back.
We're back.
Are we back?
Yes.
All right.
We're back. I'm still seeing the
So-
spinning bar.
Chris, do you see us?
I got you.
I see.
You
Yes,
guys?
yes,
Okay. Okay, cool. We're good.
All right. Sorry. So this is what happens when you use hotel Wi-Fi.
Yeah.
Sorry. Okay.
Yep. All right. So
Grenade in the lap.
So we're talking
Yes.
about seaplanes and seaplane physics, and one of the issues is that when you're driving your seaplane up, if the seaplane collides with anything, right now it tends to get launched up into hyperspace.
Because one moment it's not under the dock, the next moment when it taxis in, now it's way under the dock, so up it goes. So the trick is to have your dock have like a 90-degree angle, so the seaplane just kind of bounces off of it like this. It's kind of a new paradigm.
Right.
But
This hasn't been possible in
what comes
X-Plane's
next?
physics engine since as long as I've been involved in X-Plane, which is
Yep.
like 1,000 years.
Yep.
We're actually looking to fix this. So
Yep.
a whole bunch of dynamics things, not just seaplanes, should be quite a bit nicer and less astonishing. I mean,
Yeah.
I think it's going to be much nicer to drive badly and bonk into things than it used to
Yep.
be.
Yep.
There was a couple questions from the dev blog about networking. Just a quick update. What Jorg is working on right now. So Jorg updated how the extrapolation over the network works to make formation flying better. But that code still depended on the existing packets getting through. And that's great if you're in a LAN. You could do a LAN flight with better formation flying. But if you were across the internet, you still had the problem of getting it tough to get two X-planes connected. So Jorg's next project is redoing the multiplayer and external visuals and these other X-plane to X-plane connections with a library called RACnet, which specializes in making sure the packets actually get there across the internet reliably with good timing. And this should be a big improvement in terms of reliability for users who want to do flights across a wide area network or across less than ideal connectivity.
So how are users going to identify themselves if their like IP address is a low, it's the ever-present 192.168.10.5
Right.
or whatever?
So once we get RACnet, then we can start working on helping people make matches across. What RACnet does right now is if you can find your friend's IP address and enter it, the packets will actually work, which is not working well right now. So that's the next step in a series
So it
of
overcomes
steps.
network address translation.
Yes. Yeah. One person does have to have their router open, I think.
Okay.
But right now, you just have unreliability. And when Jorg has talked to users after he did this this better timing, what he found was just chaos in terms of the packets actually getting there. So RACnet is the next step. And this is part of a series of things we're doing to have better synchronization. And eventually where we want to get is where everything is synchronized. So not just the airplane, but your push truck, so that if you're flying and your friend pushes you back, you see the push truck as well. And so we can synchronize more things with better timing data more reliably. So that's kind of the roadmap that we're working through. Hopefully RACnet goes into 11:30. We'll see. It's in progress now. We got more from the feed. Besides, where are you guys?
I'm not seeing a ton of... I've been trying to pick out questions that multiple people wanted the same answer to and not just do tech support over the live feed. But
It should be noted that the people who are not here from the company have turned this into a drinking game. And each time somebody posts an X-Plane bug number into the chat, I think they're doing a shot.
oh, well, somebody's drinking already then.
Good.
That's a good game. That sounds like fun.
We did get a question about what happened to the Citation X.
Huh? What?
Yeah. We should talk about it because it happened.
It's out there.
Yeah. About 2 or 3 years ago, we all got together and we said that we were going to have clear quality guidelines for our airplanes in terms of how they look and how accurate they are and what
spelled them
things
out
will be
in docs.
modeled.
Yep.
It was like a checklist for how to make really good airplanes. And we all felt really good about that. And it was also really easy because all we had to do was open a Google Doc and write down some stuff on paper. And that's a lot like a diet, right? The really easy part is to go, I'm on a diet. And the really hard part is when the chocolate donut is sitting there and you're just
And you wanna
looking
eat
at
it.
it and you have to do the
And
hard
it's
part.
2 months later.
And what happened with the Citation is it was a plane that didn't meet the quality criteria for X-Plane 11.
Yeah.
And so we pulled it from the release at the last minute because it wasn't up to par. And that's the hard part of having this high quality bar and saying we're going to have every single plane in the fleet done up to a certain quality level. So it wasn't good enough, and we yanked it.
Well, and not only was it not good enough, it was not good enough in ways that we couldn't really salvage without doing it literally from scratch.
Right.
Like we were better off just doing it from scratch.
Right.
Which is rough.
Right. Now, my understanding is that pictures of it did get out into the marketing material, which is a mistake, and I'm sorry about that. When we go into the release, pretty much chaos and complete anarchy breaks out, and everyone's working like crazy to try and get the release done, and everyone's asking for screenshots and trying to show what's almost done, and, in that process,
They got out.
an airplane that we thought might make it but ended up not making it made it into some of the marketing materials.
Got out.
So,
A lot of questions on water, both current water textures, water texture bugs where they get brown tiles in the middle of the Atlantic, and 3D water.
the brown tile bug is a bug. That one needs to get fixed relatively soon. I don't think we have great reproduction steps on that. I'd say if you haven't filed a bug, that would be useful.
Yeah. If you know how to cause it, tell us how to cause it.
Passing this on from Jennifer, in general, file more bugs because, believe it or not, there are things that get discussed all over the forums, and then occasionally somebody says on the dev blog, when are you going to fix X? And we're like, what's that? And they go, oh, it's all over the forums. But everyone thought somebody else was going to file the bug, and we don't get the information where we need it. I think it's a shader bug. I don't know how it happened, but we need to reproduce it to fix it.
Texture, color, and quality.
Right. It is on the roadmap to improve the water. I had some prototype tech for 3D water. It was not good enough to ship. It sometimes did cool 3D stuff, and sometimes just drew crazy artifacts all over the screen and made a giant mess. So it was a science project. It's still in the works.
Alex, you're getting dragged.
Oh, yeah?
They said, the guy on the left said that he makes everything pretty. The water is not pretty.
Oh.
In Alex's defense, he did not make it.
He has
did
not
not
worked
make
on
the
the water.
Yeah.
I did not make the water.
Yeah.
The water was there before I got here.
We didn't draw the water.
Let's see.
Nice.
Welcome to Boston. There was a question on the dev blog about SLI and Crossfire support, and normally I just roll my eyes at these things because I'm old and cranky, but I did want to mention it because Vulkan's coming up, and there was some confusion about what's the relationship between Vulkan and SLI and Crossfire. And SLI and Crossfire is when you use 2 GPUs to do the work twice as fast. I do not expect that we will ever support 2 GPUs to draw only one monitor twice as fast. It's a case that is extremely hard to make work right, is a very inefficient use of the second GPU. You got 2 4 gig VRAM video cards, and you get 4 gigs, not 8. And in some cases, the work has to be done twice, so it's not terribly efficient. And video card prices seem to be coming back to earth.
Yay!
We had a phase earlier this year, thanks to Bitcoin, where a sort of Ethereum, they're true. Where because of Ethereum, the price of a modest video card like a 1070 was over $1,000. Yeah, and that was ridiculous and awful and annoyed us. But that's not the normal state of the video card market, and it looks like things are coming back to earth. And in the normal state of the market, it doesn't make sense economically to really do a lot of dev work so that 2 older GPUs can work in tandem to do what one newer GPU can do. You're better off just upgrading your card more often or getting the high-end card.
The analogy you always use is it's like having 2 women try to have a baby in 4.5 months. It's,
Right,
you know.
right. And the problem is the monitor. It is the baby. It's hard to cut in half in a way that actually works.
Right.
Now, there is a case that may someday be interesting, especially post-Vulkan, which is 2 separate monitors. There, once we have Vulkan and once we're in a position to use multi-core better, then we can start to look at, well, what if this video card with this core does this monitor, and this video card with this core does this monitor? That's a configuration that makes sense. It's still not easy. Vulkan doesn't make it easy. It makes it possible. But it's definitely a configuration that people are interested in and would like to have. And it doesn't have the 9-woman, 1-month sharing problem.
Yeah.
So that's the case that we may someday get to. SLI for 1 monitor. If you have 1 big monitor, just get a bigger video card, if that's what you need.
Somebody said somebody got to wake Austin up.
I'm with you.
There's a lot of questions about mobile aircraft. So there's none I can discuss at this time. I can just say we are always working on improved aircraft for mobile and new aircraft for mobile. It is not a fast process because they are almost literally the same aircraft as we have on desktop as far as how difficult they are to make, because they, all the systems are modeled, all the manipulators are there. It's basically a desktop plane with slightly reduced poly count and texture quality,
resolution, yep.
just to run on a phone. But otherwise, it's just as complex to make, which is why they're not easy to make by the dozen. Let's put it that way.
Yeah.
So how many aircraft do we have now that have like full desktop systems and all that stuff? Like you can do the complete startup procedure.
Cessna, Cirrus, King Air, Baron, 7.3, the MD-80, the 7.4,
Four? Yeah.
So 7, I
Something.
think. Yeah.
The thing that killed me was I made the little video that we did for starting up the MD-80.
Yeah.
And I went to the artist and I said, hey, I'm really having trouble with this. Can you get me instructions for doing the startup procedure?
Except they were asking for the Q400, right?
Oh no, we're talking about
This is MD-80. Oh, okay.
So
All right.
so the artist says, well, I don't have instructions for you, but you can just go look at this video for how they do it in the real thing. And I was like,
Yeah.
well, okay, yeah, I guess that'll work. and it did. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's how you do it. It's cool.
Crazy.
It's amazing, yeah, on a phone.
Yep. X-Plane is not being ported to consoles.
I
Sorry.
get that a lot, actually.
Yeah.
I get that a lot.
Yeah.
I mean, the whole thing about X-Plane is you don't always know what you're going to get with the airplane you design and the way you fly it and the ways you're going to interact with it. And I think the console kind of takes away a lot of that freedom. So it's not something that I'd even really want to entertain unless maybe we had both the desktop and the mobile apps just dialed in and doing exactly what I wanted. And then we would ask if we had resources for console. But obviously that's not happening in the next couple of years.
If we run out of ideas for how to make desktop and mobile,
Hallelujah!
Yeah.
Right. But
we're this close.
I mean, to be clear, like the issue is just that we have a lot of other fish to fry, and console dev is not cheap. Console dev is big. Like you're gonna go to Nintendo ahead of time and get some pre-approval because you don't want to do all the dev, and then they don't approve it, and it's gonna be millions of dollars.
And at the end of
the
the day, I'm not sure you have a better app. It's not. I don't think it's gonna be more fun to use on a console than on an actual desktop computer. And so why go to all the trouble to make an app that's not quite as good? It doesn't seem to me.
It's definitely not where our focus is.
Yeah.
All right.
Well,
I think we're running out of time.
Yeah, we've got only another few
Official
minutes
store
left.
in X-Plane.
How does 57 minutes go so fast? We said we were going to do this for an hour?
Yeah.
hour-ish.
Jeez, don't see how this time goes so fast.
There
else we got?
were some specific questions
hurry.
that were esoteric on the dev blog. I'll try and just go check them off in the comment section if they were a little bit inside baseball.
A lot
There's
of questions
no other
on
flight model questions, Chris?
There have not been a ton of flight model questions.
Austin wants to talk
Nobody
about
loves
the
flight
flight
No,
Maybe
no,
I should take a nap.
there were questions about tail draggers and taxi.
Tail dragger, sure.
Oh, tail dragger's good. All right, somebody found something to complain about that I'm doing wrong. Yay! So there's a few issues with the landing gear in X-Plane. Obviously, it's not perfect. It doesn't quite understand the flex of the tires when the airplane starts moving. The friction coefficient of the tires goes up linearly with the sign of the slip angle of the tire, which a race car driving handbook says happens. But one of the issues that's going on, I think, is this may sound a little surprising, the aerodynamic side force from the fuselage. Now, that may seem weird, but in the version you're flying now, 1125, I think is the number you have on it. If the aerodynamic force in that fuselage is applied in the wrong magnitude in the wrong location, that'll tend to pop the airplane around a little more. That has already been fixed by me in 1130. So 1130 is going to have better aero effects from the fuselage. I think what we finally decide with the prop wash is after all the new math I put in the prop wash, the final end result is not that much different prop wash wise from what we had in 1120, right?
It's different.
Okay. I thought the whole test was to get the King Air to do exactly the same thing with no change. But was that only with the experimental flight model turned off?
Off.
Okay,
yeah.
okay. there
Once
we
you
go.
experiment, things get experimental.
Okay, good. And in my humble opinion, better. But my definition of better is closer to the real airplane, not closer to what people are used to. But So, yes, I'm improving the aero loads on the fuselage and the prop wash for the tail draggers. It'll affect all airplanes, but tail draggers is where you'll notice it the most. And I think I'm going to want to I want to do a little more flying in the L5 before I comment on whether I need to change the landing gear anymore.
Sure.
Certainly the landing gear is just fiendishly hard to get right, because with an aerodynamic surface, however much you turn it into the wind, that's going to like change the force. But with a tire, it's like how much you turn it doesn't exactly change the force, it changes where it's going to be.
Right.
And the whole idea of a force-based sim is the forces drive it to where it wants to be. And if you can understand that, that's a little paradigm, you'll understand why it's so hard to get tires to work in a force-based model like X-Plane. But I'll take a note to fly the L5 a little more with the latest aero to see how the tires feel, to see if I can do some action and say 10, 15 knot crosswinds.
So hypothetically, if users were unhappy with how the planes are flying, in 1130 they need to fly them with the experimental flight model on to see if you're on the right track, right? And then if that still doesn't seem to be working, do you want screenshots with the force vectors? Do you want instructions for how to fly? Do you want videos with a flare in the Canadian winter? What are you looking for?
Right, yeah. So if anybody wants to talk to me about a flight model bug, just to save everybody a little bit of time, here's what I always ask them for. Send me the ACF file that you're using. Send me a brief written description, possibly screenshots, over what the airplane is doing in X-Plane, and send me a brief little movie or description of what you think the real airplane should do. I'm a little less interested in what X-Plane 1120 did or what X-Plane 1110 did. That's not my interest. My interest is what the real airplane does and what the current, latest version of X-Plane is doing with the experimental box checked. The experimental flight model, it's in the settings menu, upper right. It's on the first tab over, as I recall, the general tab, lower left. There's a box for experimental flight model. Make sure that's turned on so you have all the latest stuff I've coded, and just send me the write-ups. Here's what the real airplane does with proof, and here's what X-Plane does. And include the ACF file so I can try it for myself. But one of the little things that annoys me is when people say, oh, the real airplane does XYZ, unlike X-Plane. And I'm like, really? Why? Let's prove that. And I go find the pilot's operating handbook for the airplane myself, because the bug reporter never bothered to actually look at a POH, and I find that X-Plane is matching the POH perfectly. This person just never bothered to actually find out what the real airplane could do. So make sure you give me the proof on why the real airplane does it. And saying, my friend Joe told me that's what he saw an airplane do one day, that's not exactly proof compared to a POH or a disciplined flight test.
Austin, this user says, any news on the jet engine windmilling? He said he sent data 8 months or so ago.
I have improved jet engine windmilling, so the answer is yes, but I cannot, sitting here now, guarantee that the windmilling I have is in direct response to exactly what he sent. But, somebody did send me windmilling data for the Boeing 737-800, I think, and I did get that into 1130. I do have much better windmilling. I can't guarantee it's the same guy that is talking to you now, but I do have much better windmilling for 1130, and it came straight out of Boeing. It came out of a Boeing book that lists what the N1 and N2 should be as a function of Mach number and altitude.
Right, so I see a ton of people talking about shared cockpit and Copilot in VR. We were actually just talking about this
Takes
earlier.
us to RACnet.
It's a very cool idea.
We think this is cool too.
Yeah, I would say we're putting the pieces together for this type of thing.
Why you rebuild the networking stack to be reliable across long distances, everything in sync, blah blah blah.
Right. Multiplayer on mobile, we want it improved. It is something on the roadmap, but I mean I can't give a time for that. But we definitely acknowledge that we want you to be able to have a better multiplayer experience than we currently have.
It is safe to say we're working on global scenery for mobile now.
Right.
We think better multiplayer on mobile comes after that because we want you to have a bigger area, the whole world to fly around before we're doing that.
And the work we're doing on desktop with RACnet, this is meant for mobile too. We're going to have.
It's inevitable that many protocols will merge between mobile and desktop, certainly including the multiplayer and RACnet protocols. And that doesn't necessarily mean that a mobile person is going to fly with a desktop user, but I certainly wouldn't consider that to be impossible.
Sure.
Although we'll never get the terrains to match at busy airports, right? Because we got different terrain elevation grids for mobile and desktop. But maybe the worst you'd see is the other guy seems to be a few meters higher or lower, but you can still basically get the experience. Anyway, it's a type of convergence we're always thinking about for the long run.
Right. Before we sign off, I did want to mention there's a new version of World Editor, and there's a bunch of guys who are doing fantastic open source work on it. I think for the next version of World Editor, we're going to get an OpenStreetMap Slippy map and background imagery in, so you can actually see what you're doing. This is Michael and Julian have been working on this for a while now, and Ted did some work on it. So I think we're going to finally get there. That's going to be really cool, because somebody asked on the dev blog about tools, and we're also working on the next version of the Blender exporter plugin, which is able to do VR and a bunch of other cool stuff. And I think that's already in beta, or the next beta is coming out this week. So the tools work has been ongoing, and we're just trying to keep them as up to date as possible for all the stuff we're doing.
We might, Ben, just mention that some of the shows that we're going to be doing.
Sure.
We're doing Cosford, which is in England. That will be the first week of October. And we're doing Lelystad, which is in Holland, outside of Amsterdam. That's the first week of November. And then next year we're on target to do the Flight Sim Expo, which I think now has been announced for Orlando.
Right.
June.
And in June.
Right.
And we should also be at Oshkosh at AirVenture late July, early August of next year.
Cool.
With some cool stuff.
I think I need to have my traditional rant, because I've just realized that I tend to rant on the dev blog, but a lot of customers, I would say most customers, don't hang out at the dev blog because it smells funny, like a locker room over there.
Yeah, it's me. I'm sorry.
There's a ton of angst between desktop users saying stop wasting so much time on mobile, and mobile users saying stop wasting so much time on desktop. And my response is always the same, which is that I think Ben has likened this to older brother and little brother, where older brother gets a shiny toy, and when he's done with it, little brother gets a chance to play with it, and so the toy really benefits both. It's kind of the relationship we have here with mobile and desktop, because if you guys like the V11 UI, well, that started on mobile. The GUI infrastructure started on mobile. The Fmod has been running on mobile for a while, even though we don't have the sounds over there yet. It kind of started on mobile and came over to desktop. Like, both platforms share the code with each other, and any work we do on one ends up on the other. Particle Systems, another example, that started on mobile and it came to desktop. So if we're talking about mobile and mobile features, it doesn't necessarily mean that it's 100% effort on mobile and desktop gets zero of that. It's more likely that 20% gets spent on mobile and 80% of it gets used on both.
Right.
So,
there's very few areas where we have to keep them separate for hardware reasons.
Right.
But as phones get more powerful, we get to share more and more stuff.
Also, desktop kind of always wins when code is shared on mobile, because mobile is such a, it's compared to desktop processors, that mobile's slower GPU, so it tends to force us to improve the the efficiency of our code.
Yeah.
If it has to run, if Austin does stuff with pushback trucks that's a little slow, we find out when we port it to mobile, and all of a sudden now Austin has to make his desktop code more efficient to run on mobile. So
Well, there's definitely a convergence that's happening between the two platforms.
absolutely, every version I end up
Yes,
taking
closer.
more and more from desktop to mobile, or vice versa, and they are converging, like Randy said. The Garmin's just came over to mobile not too many versions ago, and that was almost completely a drop-in feature because of desktop. So,
All right, well, we're 7 minutes over.
Cool.
All right.
Well,
Thank
all
you.
so
Thank you
much
for watching.
you.
For all of the Laminar people watching,
Yeah.
get back to work.
yeah,
Or you
Sydney,
guys
get back to work.
get off in general and get back to work.
The link to this, if you a lot of people ask questions that I said we've already talked about that. We will post. This is being recorded. We will post a link to this on all the social media channels and the dev blog at some point. So if you did come in late and miss some of the questions, check back. Within the next 24 hours, we'll have a link up.
Right.
Yep.
And we'll post updates on where we're going with 11:30 on the dev blog as we start the private testing and things like that.
All right.
Okay, cool.
Thank you.
All right.
See ya.
Thank
Thanks,
you.
guys.
Catch next time.
Appreciate you guys.